Hey everybody, it's Lindsay from North End Organic Nursery and welcome to Garden Minutes. Today we're going to talk about fall gardening. So I'm going to go a little bit into our 3 seasons. So here in the Treasure Valley and a lot of places that are similar to us in a zone 6-ish, they call us a 6B, 7A. To be safe, we always kind of err towards the 6 and the 5, which is like a colder climate. It's always better safe than sorry, right? But in this climate, we have 3 seasons. A lot of people just consider our season to be the time when we are frost-free and therefore can grow things that are of the fruiting nature, such as tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, watermelons, squash, okra, cucumbers, all these things that are fruiting bodies on the plants themselves. In the cooler months, we have the ideal situation to be able to grow actual vegetables. So the other things that we are growing in the summer months and focusing on in those summer months are not vegetables at all. They're actually fruits. Anything that's got a seed inside of it is the fruiting body of the plant, right? Hence it's a fruit. So in the cooler months, you have to think about the cooler months ushering in your vegetable crops. The vegetable crops that we can grow here are numerous. So think about pretty much anything where you're going to eat the leaf, stem, or root of the plant. And there you have it. You have a vegetable crop. Now there's a handful of exceptions and outliers that don't follow the rules, but in general, overall, so let's give a couple example of outliers. Legumes, they make up their own rules completely. So beans in general, like bush beans and pole beans, really prefer heat. They're heat-loving crops. Whereas peas and then fava beans, they are cold-loving crops. But then there's stuff that's like tropical peas and asparagus peas, and they actually prefer hot weather. So you just gotta know your legumes and who wants to grow when. But for the fall months and for the spring months, we can do snow peas, snap peas, and shell peas. These are all fantastic pea options that we can grow in the cooler months, and now is the time to get them in the ground. You have to give a little extra time in the fall for some of these plants to to mature in time for us to eat them before we really go into a hard winter. I always say you want to add about 20% more time to the maturation process than you would in the springtime, because if you think about it, in the springtime we're going from cold to hot, and that naturally expedites the maturation process. Whereas right now we're going from hot to cold. We're going to put stuff in the ground, it's going to establish, it's going to grow well right now, and then as it gets cooler and the days get shorter, it's going to kind of put the brakes on things. So things will not grow as quickly towards the end, and therefore we want to make sure we give it enough time to grow. So the first thing we want to think about as we are transitioning out of summer and into our kind of fall winter crops, into our 3rd season, my favorite, we want to think about what do we want to grow. As I mentioned earlier, we can grow pretty much anything where we're eating the leaf, stem, or root. So chard, kale, arugula, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Now those guys are technically the flower of the plant that we are eating, not the actual vegetable part, but close enough. Just throw that into that category. Carrots, beets, rutabaga, turnips, parsnips, peas, fava beans, I'm missing a ton. Lettuce, spinach, I'm probably repeating myself now. Chicory, frisee. If it's a green plant, not an herb so much like basil, but if it's a green vegetable, then you can grow it now, and it's a great time to get it in the ground. You can actually even put in onions at this late date. Now, I wouldn't expect to get a big honkin' fair winning onion, but you can get a small onion. You can definitely get some like green onions in order to be able to use them in other types of culinary functions. You can do shallots. Generally, I would probably recommend getting shallots as starts right now, and you can do the same thing with onions. At this particular date, so we're towards the middle of August right now, if you haven't started your seeds yet for something like broccoli or cabbage or Brussels sprouts, and they have a lot of days to maturity on the packet, I would go ahead and visit your local nursery and try to get something that is already been started, so you get a bit of a head start, because they take quite a bit of time. So today what I'm going to do because as you can see behind me, I have a lot of my summer veggies going strong still, and I don't really want to take them out in order to plant my fall garden. So I have to get a little bit creative. Now there's some stuff that probably after this stuff frosts, I'll sneak in some more things, or maybe just do a cover crop. More on that later. So in the interim, I am going to use fabric containers, and these are really neat bags. And you can get them in all kinds of shapes and sizes, different brands. I really like some of the ones I get from Hydro Farm. And then these ones down here, I think are made by Bloem, and they are, insert here what the name of this particular planter is called, but they are fantastic. They are about 3 feet wide. They have handles on the side. I literally dragged them into place by myself today in order to put them in between my garden beds. What I found with my particular system is things behind my garden beds weren't getting watered by my sprinklers, because I currently just have overhead sprinklers. Gonna fix that next year. So I dragged these beds into here, and I actually used them this spring as well for my spring veggies, which are a mirror image pretty much of my fall veggies. And I pulled out all the old plants that kind of were spent and done, and I'm going to refresh the soil now and fluff it out with some Gardener and Bloom planting mix. I'm also going to be adding some Natural Guard all-purpose fertilizer. Now the reason why I'm doing an all-purpose fertilizer is this. I've talked about this before, but you have 3 major nutrients in any bag of fertilizer. They're the 3 numbers on the front of every single bag, okay? Hopefully the camera's picking this up. This one's a 444. This is a perfectly balanced fertilizer. The first number is nitrogen, N. Second number is phosphorus, P. Third number is K, or potassium. So we have NPK. And these are the percentages found in this particular product for these 3 nutrients. Every bag of fertilizer has this. So nitrogen, I would say green and protein. So protein synthesis, chlorophyll synthesis, that's what you need the nitrogen for. Chlorophyll, by the way, is almost pure protein, which is why kale has as much protein per calorie as beef. Per calorie, not by weight, not by, whatever, but per calorie as beef, because of all that protein-rich chlorophyll. The middle number, phosphorus, is roots, fruits, flowers, and sweetness. Now in the summertime, we try to get a higher number there because we're focusing on our fruiting vegetables and flowering plants, so we want to have a little bit more phosphorus in there to kind of give them a boost. The last guy is potassium, and this is like general vigor and health of the plant, its ability to assimilate nutrients, to deal with heat stress, drought stress, and to just generally be healthy and resilient. So an important nutrient, not something we often see deficiencies in, but since we are growing plants that are both going to be highly nitrogen rich and also rooting vegetables, I like this balance when we're going into a fall garden. Whereas a summer garden, I would want a bigger middle number here, like a 462 or something along those lines. I'm also going to be replenishing my beds with this product called Azomite. Azomite stands for A to Z of minerals. And the reason why this is an important product, and I like to do this twice a year, both spring and fall as I'm starting my new season, the Azomite replenishes the minerals that we mine out of our soil just by harvesting our food and consuming it. And if you see all these vegetables behind me, at the end of the season, the plants themselves are gonna get pulled out and composted, and I'm going to bring them back a lot in nutrients when I add the compost back in. But some of these micronutrients just get gone and you want to replenish them, and so I really like adding the Azomite twice a year. Now some of the Azomite will become available to my fall crop, but a lot of it is an investment in my spring crop, believe it or not, since I'm going to be reusing the soil over and over again. Every time I harvest and clean out and get ready for a new crop, I add some more Azomite back in. Testimonies across the board verify that flavor is greatly enhanced when you are replenishing your minerals. You got to think about all the complexity that's in a strawberry or a tomato. A lot of that is the mineral content that you have in your soil that the plant's absorbing, and keeping up the minerals and making sure that you're replenishing them is super important. Application rates are not that high, so when you're talking about a vegetable bed, you're talking about 1 to 2 teaspoons per plant. So I have brought back some peas and cilantro from the nursery today over at North End Organic Nursery. We start a bunch of the stuff ourselves. They got a little dry today. Then they're kind of perking back up as I give them some water. But I'm gonna plant some of those in here today alongside with just a variety of other seed packets that I have. And you know, this brings up another great question. People often ask is how long are seed packets good for? A lot longer than you think. I would never throw out seeds without trying to at least sprout them first. There's a lot of times seeds will just reduce in germination, and therefore you don't have maybe every seed that you planted come up. But is that a big loss? No. If the older they get, just plant more of them. But so today I've got some radishes, French breakfast, got some different kinds of carrots, Plant Success Mycorrhizae, can't forget this. This is something I like to add in every time I plant as well, because it's just great for introducing those beneficial microorganisms, including mycorrhizae, but there's like 20 something, 30 something different beneficial microbes in here that help fight disease, help with nutrient cycling. So this is something I like to add in whenever I'm planting as well. Got some beautiful scarlet kale. I've got some Bates kale, butterfly spinach. Got lots of spinach. I've got some Snake River seeds in my house that I'm gonna be bringing out here later too to get planted, but this is just kind of a handful of stuff that I grabbed. I also grabbed my Gardener in Bloom planting mix. I love this stuff. Whenever I'm doing these kinds of fabric beds, I love to use this. The other option is the Gardener in Bloom raised bed mix. I love that one as well. It really just depends on where my car is parked in the parking lot and which one I end up grabbing that day. The biggest difference between the two of them is the planting mix is more designed to kind of be blended in with your garden beds, where the raised bed mix is more designed to go straight into a container. But I find that they both really do work well, and I like them both. So I had this here. This is what we're going to use today, but the purple and white bag, the raised bed mix, fantastic as well. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up my two low boys, is what they're called. I couldn't remember that earlier. I'm going to fill up my two low boys with a fresh bag of this, because when I filled them up in the spring, I kind of didn't fill them up high enough. I put about one bag in per one of these fabric containers, and I really should have put two. Plus just pulling out plants, it takes some soil with it. So going to replenish my my soil, and I'm also going to be adding my Azomite and my Natural Guard all-purpose fertilizer. And this is going to go into both beds. As far as how much, I'm just going to follow the application rates that are on the bag, kinda. I am very much guilty of sort of eyeballing things, but heck, after 20 years of gardening, I deserve it, right? But the instructions on the back of these bags are very helpful, and I suggest that you follow them. Then I'm gonna plant my cilantro and some kale and probably some spinach in one of the bags. I've got two other bags down there that I'm going to mix up with some other veggies. I'm probably gonna wait and sneak some of my carrots and stuff that are deeper rooted into my actual established raised bed, so they have enough room to actually put down a good deep taproot. And I do have some space in my already existing raised beds, not my fabric beds, that I can do that in to make sure that they have all the space that they need. And I'm gonna put my shallow rooted crops like lettuce, chard, kale, arugula, all that stuff into these fabric beds, so I can start growing now and I don't have to wait for everything else to winter kill. You want to know what else is really cool about using these kinds of fabric beds or pots of any kind of containers that are movable, is this. All right, a little bit more of a tangent here. This time of the year, we have a lot of overhead sunlight, right? It's warm, there's plenty of sun. We don't have to worry about having enough sun. We're actually trying to sometimes hide our cold-loving crops away from the afternoon sun because it's so bloody hot. I often recommend people plant cold-loving crops on the north side of a house, or at the very least someplace that gets afternoon shade. As we go into the winter months, flip that. You want to put your cold-loving crops where they're going to get the maximum amount of sun, because we're going to be creating microclimates, and we want those shortened days that we have in winter to be absorbed in every possible way by our crops. So when you have a bed that has handles on it like this, you can actually move it around your yard to maximize that exposure. Or if you have it in a pot or on wheels or anything that kind of is more mobile. If you don't have that as an option, don't let that be a discouragement. These are just simple suggestions that you might want to try. So later on, I might move this to the front of my house, which gets western sun, or someplace that makes sure that it gets at least the maximum amount of daylight hours. Definitely no place that's going to be getting any kind of shade. So right now, I want to protect it from the western sun. Later on, that western sun is going to be the warmth that I need to keep this rocking and rolling and producing. So, little digression there. I'm going to start filling up my beds, prepping them with my Azomite, my all-purpose fertilizer from Natural Guard, and my Gardener in Bloom planting mix. Be right back. So, I have got my new soil in to top off these two low boys, and I have added my fertilizer and my Azomite, kind of gently mixed them in. Now I am going to, on this back bed, because my water comes from this way until I get my sprinklers kind of set up to where I've got drip. For now, my water comes this way, so I don't want this to be blocking that guy. This is my PTP. PTP, 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 say that 10 times fast. My PTP is going in this bag for guess what? Yep, you got peas. I'm a dork, I'm sorry guys, you have to tolerate me. Or don't, you can just tune out right now. So, I brought some peas with me from the nursery. Like I said, I let them get a little bit dry today, so they're a little bit droopy, but nonetheless, oh, I almost forget one of my most important things. I'm gonna put my Plant Success Mycorrhizae into the areas that I'm planting. Make sure that I've got some beneficial microorganisms kicking into gear here. Don't need a lot of this. Comes in different sizes and shakers. Now with peas, you can inoculate them. You can buy Pea Inoculant, and I do recommend it. I just didn't bring any today, so I might come back and plant some peas from seed and then inoculate them. And what that Pea Inoculant does, it's a rhizobacteria, and the rhizobacteria will help the plant to suck nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fix it for the plant itself to grow with. And it's a magnificent thing, and we utilize it in cover cropping a lot. It's great, it'll increase your yields when you're planting legumes. So I do recommend it. All right, so we are kind of fighting daylight here. I'm gonna use the rest of this Plant Success Mycorrhizae in here. So why am I using mycorrhizae? It's important to understand a little bit about this beneficial microorganism. So mycorrhizal fungi are these symbiotic organisms that literally embed themselves into the root zone of many, many plants, almost all of them. And what they do is, once they've embedded themselves into the root zone, they then venture out into the soil root zone far beyond where the roots are able to go, and they can't, the roots can't grow nearly as fast as the mycorrhizae can. And they become an effective multiplication of the plant roots, and so they can go out there and get nutrients for the plant. They help the plant with water. They can do all these things that are like a second set of hands, but instead of a second set of hands, it's like a 5,000th set of hands, because they're so prolific, and they help plants deal with stress a lot better and just grow so much better. So trees, shrubs, vegetables, I recommend using this stuff on almost everything, especially if you're planting trees and shrubs. If you want an insurance program, put mycorrhizae in soil. I like this company, the Plant Success. They make a really good product, lots of different packaging that you can get it in, different sizes. So in this little bed, I'm gonna do some spinach and some, I think, kale. I'm gonna probably split it up, and I have 2 more beds over there. I'm gonna do some other types of greens and lettuces. I'm probably going to squeeze some carrots and stuff over here. And what I'm really looking forward to with this fall crop, if you haven't eaten a bowl of spinach that has been frosted on, or kale, or if you don't like arugula, you need to try arugula after it's been frosted on. Now, why? What does a frost do to actually give such an improvement to the flavor of these vegetables? Well, it's very simple. Imagine if you had a cup of tap water and a cup of sugar water, and you placed them both outside on a freezing night or stuck them in the freezer. Which one would freeze first? Well, the tap water would freeze first because sugar lowers the freezing point of water, as does salt. So it makes it so that that will freeze second. So a plant does the exact same thing. It takes the carbohydrates, which are just complex sugars, right, out of the root zone of the plant. They mobilize them, break them down into simpler sugars, and then put those simple sugars into the leaves. When the leaves have simple sugars in them and a cold night comes around, that leaf won't freeze as fast. Therefore, you have a sweeter plant for our sake. I'm sure that's the plant's intention, right? Give us tastier vegetables? Probably not. But the plant, it's a survival mode, but it makes those fall veggies taste so much better. Fall cabbage, kale, chard, arugula, all these greens have such an amazing flavor when harvested after a frost. Another great reason to do fall vegetables. So, we're gonna call it for tonight. I think that nature has told me that the sun's going out, so we're gonna have to pick up on some other aspects of fall gardening in the next video. Thanks for joining me today. As always, a ton of fun. Thanks for tolerating me. This is Lindsay with Garden Minutes in the North End Organic Nursery, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.